I've been an investment banker for the last 26 years, having worked at bulge bracket investment banks and running my own boutique. And so I've had a lot of exposure to different product groups and industry groups within investment banking. I've also been lucky enough to work on Wall Street at one of the big bulge brackets. So really get a lot of exposure to a number of bankers in a lot of different groups. And so here's my best and worst investment banking analyst jobs. From my perspective, the worst investment banking analyst job is definitely financial sponsors. I think as a senior banker, financial sponsors is an amazing group to be in. You've got clients that are extremely active, capital markets and on the M&A side of things, and the lifestyle as a senior banker can be really good. I think the problem for an analyst is that you really don't learn much as a financial sponsor, financial analyst. And the reason why is when you're on a particular transaction, there's always going to be the analysts from the product group. So if it's M&A, there'll be an M&A analyst, and there'll also be an analyst from the industry group. So if it's like tech, so there'll be a tech analyst, an M&A analyst, and you as the financial sponsors analyst. And the problem as a financial sponsors analyst is you're not an expert of anything. You're not an expert in M&A, and you're not an expert in the industry. So what ended up happening on that particular transaction or pitch or whatever it might be is the financial sponsor analyst is just kind of along for the ride and watching what's going on, maybe doing the really mundane stuff that the product and the industry guys don't want to do. And the product and industry folks are really doing the interesting work like the financial modeling, putting together any presentation materials and that sort of stuff because they have the expertise. And I think this is not often said, but financial sponsors for an analyst is probably the worst role that you can get, and it's by a long stretch. Next up is capital markets, and this includes high yield capital markets, debt capital markets, and equity capital markets. Now, while all of those roles and groups are very different from each other, they all share similar characteristics in terms of the analyst experience. There are some very interesting elements of this. If you're really interested in the market, like the equity markets or the debt markets, then being in a capital markets role can be very interesting from that perspective. But the tools and the financial analysis and learnings that you gather as an analyst in one of these groups are much more limited than being in an industry group or being in a different product group like M&A. And so after a while, the things that you do and the day-to-day job that you do in a capital markets role becomes a little bit more mundane, and those skills that you've learned in that role are a little bit less applicable to other finance jobs. So when you come to leave the bank and go and do something else, your experience is more limited and it limits where you can go in terms of your next step. In the number 2 spot, I put mergers and acquisitions, or M&A. I think M&A is a fantastic group to join. And in terms of financial analysis and learnings from that role, the learnings as a financial analyst are huge and can really be applied outside of investment banking in a number of roles, either private equity, hedge funds, corporate development within a company. There's so many different applications for the skills that you would learn as an M&A analyst at a big bank. I definitely think this is the second best group within investment banking. Why is it second though? I think the only issue is that it's a bit limited in terms of what you're learning. You're learning just mergers and acquisitions. And so you're not learning about other markets, equity capital markets, debt capital markets, or any of these other products within an investment bank. You're very much restricted to just the M&A piece. And that can be a bit limiting in terms of if you want to go and become VP of finance or a senior finance role within a company, you've only done the M&A side of stuff. You haven't done capital markets, which forms such a big part of the corporate world. But no matter what, if you spent 2 to 3 years as an investment banking analyst doing M&A, it would be an amazing experience and really set you up for success for your next role. So what's the best investment banking analyst role? I believe it's in being in an industry group. Now, I am a bit biased. I spent my time in an industry group when I started my career in investment banking. But I think the difference and why it edges out M&A is that you get that multi-product experience. So as an industry banker, let's say again in tech, you would get to do M&A and really learn that part of the business. But you would also get to learn things like taking a company public or an initial public offering or IPO, or doing a follow-on offering or a convertible bond, or doing a high yield offering, or doing a loan. So there's so many different facets that when you're an industry banker, you can get exposed to so many more parts of corporate finance than you can by just being in one product group. So that's why I think that industry investment banking is probably the best. So what industry groups are there? Well, normally the most investment banks break it down into the following categories. There's TMT, or tech, media, telecom. There's industrials, which usually includes any manufacturing, shipping, and transportation. There's oil and gas and metals and mining. Oftentimes these are combined into one group. There's power and utilities. There's real estate. There's financials, consumer, and then healthcare. Now, different banks have different splits and put some subgroups within different groups, but that's pretty much consistent across the board. And what I would say in terms of which industry group is best, it really depends on what you're most interested in. If you have a keen interest into tech, then technology would be a great place to start. But if you're really interested in just the manufacturing economy or real estate or whatever it might be, any of these industry groups can be an amazing experience. I hope this video helps kind of demystify some of the investment banking groups. And I would love to hear your feedback below in the comments. And if you disagree with me, even more so, definitely put it in the comment below. If you like this stuff, please do subscribe and like the video.